Maurice Twist, Patrick Ross, and Chuck Conroy are the four candidates. On election day, which is Tuesday, polls open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can vote in Batesland. It's at the Batesland School at the Bill C. Bear Meeting Room. Up on Cooney Table, it's at Red Shirt School. The Kyle precinct will be at the Medicine Root Cap Office in Kyle. In Manderson, it's at the Wounded Knee District Cap Office in Manderson. In Oglala, it's at Brother Renee Hall. In Pine Ridge, precincts 1 and 3 at the Pine Ridge Cap Office. In Porcupine, it's at Our Lady of Lourdes Title I trailer. And in Rocky Ford, the voting precinct will be at Singing Horse Trading Post. Singing Horse Trading Post. So those are the polling places for the Oglala Lakota County School Board election. Again, there is one term. Mike Carlo Jr., who has been on the board, decided not to run. Leaves a vacancy for 1 3-year term on the board. Today we have all four candidates here. We're at the Woksape Tipi here on the campus of Oglala Lakota College here at 3 Mile Creek, Piya Wiconi campus. I'd like to very warmly welcome to KILI Radio Chuck Conroy and Pat Ross and Maurice Twist and Mary Whiteface Youngbear. They were all candidates. We're going to open today, and we're going to start with Chuck and go across the board, and we're going to ask each candidate to kind of give an opening statement, maybe some background about you or what you're running for, but just kind of an opening statement, and then we'll have some questions. We'll start with Chuck on this one and move across the table. Good afternoon, Chuck. I'm really glad you came.
Good afternoon, Tom, and good afternoon to KILI listeners and all of you out there that are listening today to us four candidates that are running for the sole position on the Oglala Lakota School Board. I guess my background is that I'm a retired educator, I'm a retired school administrator, and I've been associated with the Oglala Lakota County School Board for 27 years as a school board member, and I was vice president of that board for a while, and most of those years I was a member, just a voting member. But I am a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and with the United States Marine Corps. I was educated at the University of South Dakota, where I received my master's degree in education administration. I have an elementary degree in elementary ed from Black Hills State College, Black Hills, and I graduated from Pine Ridge High School. My employment over these past years has been, I was the elementary principal and Title I math teacher at Little Wound School for 7 years, and transferred to Pine Ridge, where I was the elementary principal and eventually became the overall school principal or superintendent. And my interest in being on the school board has always been the interest of the children, and trying to be a part of a team that provided quality education through quality curriculum, and I hope to continue that if I'm elected to the school board. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And next up we have Pat Ross. And Pat, I'd like to very warmly welcome you to the Woksape TV and KILI Radio, and I thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Tom. Greetings to everybody out there listening to KILI at this time, and I just want to send out our prayers from our Badger Society to all those that are mourning at this time when they're lost their loved ones, and kind of inappropriate, I guess, for me to be talking at this time when to be a public official when you have so many people suffering out there, but I want to moving on. Apologize for that, and I'm running for the Oglala Lakota County School Board as a person who's been on a prior school board at the Porcupine School for 8 years. I was the chairman for 4 of those years. Very, I guess, interested in the educational process of our tribal schools, and then also the county school that serves a lot of our membership here on our reservation. They take a lot of our students in the 4 schools here that are operating on our reservation, and so it's always been an interest to me on how to further our younger generation and in the educational process and the curriculum that comes forward. And it seems that sometimes the standards and do not come as easily. School boards tend to change curriculum often, so we never really give a chance for curriculums to develop. We buy into something, and 2 years later we're changing it, or the government changes it on us. It seems that the educational system has followed a lot of the greed of America by those that are partnering with educational entities and selling curriculums to our schools, and that those that are able to lobby effectively in Washington seem to those kinds of things are passed down to our children, and then we have a tendency not to have enough training in some of those areas for our teachers out there. There's not enough buy-in sometimes, and a lot of our teachers are just comfortable in what they teach in other instances. So I'm hoping as I come back, I've been from Porcupine most of my life. I also grew up in Oglala, Loman School. My father was a educator and then the business manager at Loman School for a great many years, and then I also grew up down there in the number 6 community with the Victor Dreaming Bear family, and so kind of my background on the reservation here. I've gone to school for accounting. I went to Creighton University. I got accounting background. I've also done grant management for the past 8 years prior to being on tribal council for the Oglala Sioux tribe and grant and contract management. So I'm very familiar with 638 and a lot of the grant processes that come under how the money flows down for the counties and for the tribes. So very familiar in a lot of that. I felt I was an effective leader at Porcupine School at that time, and so I thank you for allowing me to stay and being here, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Up next, we have Maurice Twiss, and Maurice, I thank you very much for coming to share.
I thank you, Tom. Certainly thank KILI Radio for setting this up. This is a nice opportunity to express some things that related to education that we've been thinking about. Just a little background on myself. I'm a long-time educator. I'm from Cooney Table, just west of Rocky Ford, about 10 miles. I grew up on Cooney Table, started my life of my education career there. I went to Shannon County School for 7 years there. I've been overall connected with Shannon County for about 43 years. It's part of my life, and I just want to continue it some in Shannon, in now Oglala Lakota County. But my life was after high school, which I graduated from then Interior, South Dakota. I had gone to Pine Ridge High School for a while, and then upon graduation from high school, I entered Chatham State College and received a bachelor's in business education. I began teaching and coaching at Ulrich, South Dakota, and later in Nebraska, at Hemingford, Nebraska, into Wyoming. I taught and coached for 9 consecutive years there. I then went to the University of South Dakota and received a master's degree in ed psychology and worked toward a doctorate degree. I returned back to the reservation, to the Pine Ridge Reservation, and worked for 37 years. My advocacy in education is quite broad and essentially for our students and essentially for the betterment of the whole systems. I, I advocate student-centered education, where the students become the focus of the purpose and the focus of the things that we do. I advocate for parent involvement and parent training. Sometimes we overlook the fact that one of the most important pieces of the education system is the parenting and their teachings. I advocate for better training and training for teachers that are more specific in the terms of the needs that we have as Native people. We need to influence a lot of people that the Native culture is so significant and important that is what we need to do. I also interested in having a safe environment and adequate schools, buildings, and really would be, if elected, I would like to continue to work on finishing our original plans of the building systems that go into Oglala Lakota County schools. We did in the past Rocky Ford School, and we did Baseland School, and an addition onto the Wolf Creek School, but that's way overcrowded. We need to do more with that, and also in the background is high school. So I think that I'm very active, very energetic, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you very much, Maurice. And we'll move the microphone over now to Mary Whiteface Youngbear, and Mary's a candidate also for the Oglala Lakota County School Board. Mary, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Tom, for having me here, and thank you again, everybody out there in the KILI listening area. Mi chante chata leampetu ki yuha na beoste na bochus papi chantoste. My name is Mary Whiteface Youngbear, and I'd just like to talk a little bit about myself for those of you that don't know me out there. First of all, I'm a believer in Wanikia, Atewa Kantranka, which means Jesus Christ. I believe in him. And I live in Porcupine all my life, and my parents are Hobart Whiteface and Effie Big O Whiteface. And I have 6 brothers, 4 sisters, and I'm a single parent. I'm a widow. My husband and my 2 daughters were tragically killed on December 10th of 2006. And that happened about north of Sharps there. And I'm also a fluent Lakota speaker, and my first language was the Lakota language. And we went to, my father moved to Minnesota. He went to Bible college and moved the family there. So I started my first year there as probably a kindergarten. And I didn't know a word of English, and my father had to translate the Lakota language for me. And through my school years, I find it very difficult for me, and this kind of like, I had a hard time struggling in school because of there was a language barrier there. But I overcame that, and there was times that my father had to come into the school and translate the language for me, and I survived during that time, and eventually I learned how to speak the Lakota language, and today I can still speak the Lakota language, and I can understand the English language very well. And also, I graduated with an Associate of Arts degree in Early Childhood degree, and also I have a Child Development Associate's degree in Early Childhood. And also before that, I also went 2 years food service training in University of Brookings. And I have received many awards, trainings through attending classes. And also, I was on the president's list 4 times, on the president's list. 3 full-time and 1 part-time with a grade point average of 3.75 and 4.0. And in 2008, I also received a public service award during the Lakota Nation Invitational. And I also served on the Native American Advocacy Project, which serves the state of South Dakota for the mentally impaired, mentally incompetent, and that was out of Winter, South Dakota. And I also was served as a policy council rep 3 different times for the early childhood education. And also my late husband and I, we also were sponsors of some dance club with the TWO Woksape. We were sponsors for several years with that. We worked with the children. And I was also one of the KILI radio disc jockeys, and Tom knows that. And I worked 17 years as a supervisory Head Start teacher in Porcupine District, and I've taught over 200 children within the Porcupine District. And prior to me, to working there, we had the program Osprey Review, and we've successfully passed the program, and there were a couple of times that they used my center, and we passed a program review. And also, we've got a written congratulation letter from state of Washington, and also from Piya. They congratulated my center because the foster grandparent, the Elaine Quiver, used my center then, and they passed their program review too, and we got a letter of recognition from Piya. And I supervised 3 other employees, 2 TWEP workers, and 5 foster grandparents. And since 2003 up to today, I'm employed with the Little Wound School, and it's been 14 years I work with Little Wound School, a total of 31 years working with children. And I now work in the special ed department at Little Wound School, meeting the needs of every children. And I really didn't have platform put together, but what I believe in as an educator is to meeting the needs of every child, putting the child first, and also making sure that their needs are met, and also parent involvement, because it's really important when parents are behind the children, standing behind them, and giving them that assurance that everything will be okay and that they are there to provide that nurturing care. So parental involvement is really important. And another thing is education starts from home. I was taught that, and I believe in that, and I've instilled that into my own family, with my own children, with my own, I've got 3 grandsons. And I always tell them that education begins at home. It doesn't begin at the school. It doesn't start with the government. It doesn't start any place but at home first. We're the first teachers of our children, and I believe in them. And also another one is supporting the teachers. The teachers are the backbones of the education, because they're meeting the children, and you have anywhere from 20 to past 20 students in your classroom, and they're all at a different learning style. So you have to meet the need of every child. You have to make your lesson plan to accommodate each child of what you're teaching in a classroom. And another one is to working together, the whole school, including the bus drivers, cooks, teachers, administrators, all working together will make the school run successfully, and it will promote wellness, and the school, they will have a successful school year. And I would just like to, if elected, I would uphold all the required duties as a school board member, and my I really believe in honesty and accountability, and also maintaining my professionalism, and also upholding the mission statement for the Oglala Lakota County School, and that's to strengthen the Lakota identity and values of students and to assure their overall well-being and academic successes. And one more thing I wanted to point out here, Tom, is there is a first for everything. And this is a first for me ever in running for a big school board. And sometimes, like if one person is too long someplace, saying too long someplace, pretty soon they get stagnant, kind of not moving, the flowing stops, and seem like they're stuck. But I thought of those things, and I thought I would just give it a try as running for a school board. So that is a little bit of history of my background, a little bit of why I'm running.
Okay.
And back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Once again, we're coming at you live from the Woksape Tipi here at Oglala Lakota College. It is, we have the Oglala Lakota County School Board Forum. There are 4 candidates for one position. We've heard from each of the candidates now. Chuck Conroy, Maurice Twist, Pat Ross, and Mary Whiteface Youngbear. On this one, we're going to start with Pat. And, you know, Oglala Lakota County Schools had some concerns. They had at one point tracked the graduation rates for those students who went through Oglala Lakota County Schools and finished 8th grade and then went on to high school. They tracked them, and they were concerned that the dropout rate from high school was really large. As many as 70% of the students who graduated 8th grade out of Oglala Lakota County schools weren't making it through high school. That survey was done several years ago, and it was one of the rationales for Oglala Lakota County starting their virtual high school. I think the pressure has to be even more today that we prepare our young, and preschool through 8th grade is a key, building that strong foundation. Does Oglala Lakota County schools build that foundation? Are there things that they can do better? Can they meet this challenge to better prepare their 8th grade graduates to move on to high school and even beyond high school? And do you have some ideas on that and how to strengthen, whether it be the curriculum or the school itself? We'll start with Pat, and then we'll move to Maurice and Mary and Chuck.
Thank you, Tom. It's a good question. Ideally, for myself, I feel, being part of the tribal education system, on council, sitting on the committee, and then but also hearing a lot of the data over the years on the school board at Piya, that it really comes down, I think, in making that big push to the difference to get kids to stay interested in school is really, like a lot of the candidates have stated, is getting the involvement back in the community, the parent involvement, to really push for that success. We're all in a situation of dire need in every family on this reservation, whether you're employed or you come from an employed family, or you're a family that's really been struggling, living off the welfare system. The barriers are basically the same for all of us. It's just getting, I guess, in the part of the curriculum of getting that understanding across to our staff, our educators that are working within the system, our administrators, that to really increase that rate or that percentage of driving it up instead of continually downward spiraling, that when they hit high school, is that to really stress those things and really try to get in touch with who we are individually, and for a lot of us, it's tough to really look at ourselves and our family structure, and that we have dysfunctionalism, within our society, and you could look at some of the kids that graduate and go on and that are successful, that are come from some of those same backgrounds, and so we really need to start looking at providing some kind of, and I hate to say survey or questionnaire, but in our communities that we're serving, that to help us identify what we need educationally for our children to make that success, that onward or after the 8th grade here at the Oglala Lakota County schools, that what's going to transition those students in high school, whether it be some kind of is it a safety issue in high school? Is it just I guess I'm thinking I guess an awkward situation for a lot of our students. Does all those things happen in our high schools here on this reservation? Are they safe for our children to attend? Do they provide that safety? Does bullying play a part in all of that? What are we doing about those things to address those things as they leave our county schools and enter into our reservation schools, which are BIA and contract and parochial down in Red Cloud? Whether or not they're providing a great atmosphere and welcoming in those freshmen, and to continue that I guess that treatment or attention that some students may need to be more successful, to be comfortable in that new environment. And then are we truly understanding a lot of our homes that these children are coming from? And then are we providing adequate counseling and those types of needs to make those students successful that move forward? A lot of the dysfunctions in our society really play into that, and whether it be the no parents at home in the evening because of maybe work or other issues that are really driving a lot of students away from education, and they're just having that hardship out there, and just thinking that not going to school is the answer. So I think we really need to look at a overall, I guess it's not just for Oglala Lakota County, but for our reservations, that we need to really push on how we're going to change that social economical picture that's really going to make a difference for our children. That whether it be so they're not feeling out of sorts, out of touch with the educational system that they're going into, and whether we're communicating with all the other high schools and curriculum and types of behaviors and things like items like that. And I think and maybe a lot more visits to these schools throughout the school year, to just kind of give these students a day in the school and see what it's like, and whatever schools they're thinking about attending for high school, I think is a start. It might not be the perfect answer for everybody, but I think it's a start. And I know it's a whole big gamut out there of possibilities of where to start, but I think you can try to get on board with the administration and stress those key things. That's what I would like to do, and hoping that we can achieve what's best for the children, and not so much what's best for the administrators and the educators, but what's going to be best for the children when they go through the system. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Maurice?
Thank you, Tom, for the information about the dropout rate. That's always been a tough thing for the schools on the Pine Ridge Reservation. According to all statistics, your number of 79% is probably even off a little bit. I think it's a little higher than that. But things that things that we need to do as a school system to help that dropout rate improve. I think that, one of the things that I look at, and some of my information that I had read comes from the State Department of Education, the Oglala Lakota report card, if you will. And some of that information reflects the fact that our dropout rate has continuously got worse since 2013. Our attendance rate has progressively got worse since 2013. And that needs to be reversed. And whatever strategies that the Oglala Lakota County School Board and school administrators can come up with, it certainly needs to be an item that needs to be dealt with. And some of those things, the attendance being low, I think also the school district itself is in fault because of the many, many days that are missed. I had just noticed on the Shannon County, the Oglala Lakota County next year's attendance or calendar, where on all Mondays throughout the year, that's 36 weeks, that there are only something like 14 days of uninterrupted attendance, things that are happening in the school. That includes consultation days, and I don't know what that is for them. It includes teacher in services. It includes other things. Some of them are holidays, of course. But I think that in addition to that, we have a dismissal or early dismissal or dismissal days for real cloudy days, not even days that the snow is very deep or the snow starts coming down and we cancel school. I think that's a learning thing for students, that they need to learn about the elements of the weather, etc. And we're encouraging the students not to be in school. So there's a tremendous amount of days that we're not in school. And I think even teacher in-service days, I know the value of that. I've been a teacher. I know that, and we've got wonderful teachers in Oglala Lakota County. But the fact being that we need to do some better scheduling to have in-service offered on some other days, like purchase a Saturday from those individuals to work, or to do it in summer sessions rather than doing it of robbing the students of their education process in order to give the teachers opportunity to learn. I know they need to be updated on some new activities, etc. But let's do it at a time where we're not hurting the student, and that's some of the things that we need to do. Another thing I think is the curriculum. We have to infiltrate that better than we're doing with Native American culture and Native American things, that language, certainly language, at the lower level especially, that we need to infiltrate the current existing curriculum with that. I know that there's been efforts by Oglala Lakota County to do that, and it's very difficult. Robert Tucrow, who currently is sitting on this board now, is probably one of the leading educators in terms of on the Pine Ridge Reservation in terms of Lakota Lakota language teaching, and hopefully that we will become more involved. And if I'm elected, that's certainly an item that becomes on the top of one of the top ones on the list. Parent involvement, I just can't say enough about for the need for that. It's apparent that we're not doing enough. We're not giving parents indications, or we don't give them a picture of what's happening in the schools and how they can succeed, by having support system built into the home is one of the most important things that you can give a child. And if we don't show some of our young parents some of the tools that they can teach effectively, then I think we're hurting our students. One of the things I think is obvious about that dropout rate is Oglala Lakota County, since I worked here, has repeatedly talked about, we're going to build a high school, we're going to start a high school, and it just doesn't come. It just isn't there yet. I've heard a couple school board reports that I think that they indicated or passed a resolution or to have a high school built by some time, and I don't know the status of that. But I'm not too sure that it yet is developed, and I think it's a crime that the children that graduate from Rocky Ford School, Wolf Creek School, Baseland, and Red Shirt have to give up their partners and their location and not go to school onto high school with some of their fellow students. I think there's no continuation between the curriculum when you transfer from a Oglala Lakota County school to a high school. I don't think there's any correlation of some of the curriculums that exist. I mean, if they go into the 9th grade at Pine Ridge School, there's no continuation of the curriculum that they learned, and that's really a crime for us to, as educators, to continue to do that pattern of behavior. So I think that a high school, and whether it be a technological high school or whether it be a continuation of the academical kind of approach that the other schools on the Pine Ridge Reservation are teaching. That includes Kyle Littlebone, that includes Oglala, Pine Ridge, and Red Cloud schools, Wombly schools. The curriculum is not synced, so that there's just a continuation of the effort of the students. So to reduce that horrendous dropout rate that we have, I think the Oglala Lakota County needs to do something to get a high school going.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. Mary. Sorry.
Okay, again, the question was the high school graduation rates and high school dropout. And I would think that as an educator, I would first look at the child. What are the needs of this child? What does this child need that's causing this child not to come to school, not wanting to be in school, or missing days attendance? And another one is Common Core meeting the needs of our Lakota children. And Common Core standards, Common Core is used nationwide. But is that appropriate for our Lakota children? I've always questioned that myself. Is Common Core feeding, really helping our Lakota children? And also another one is the high school dropout rate is the child may be feeling low, the child is frustrated because the child is not learning adequately, not in the proper like having a low reading score, having a low math score. These are some indicators that would make this child want to not be in school because they're not learning. So then again, it goes back down to the teacher and see what can be done for this child to get that reading level back up so this child can read. When this child can read successfully, then that child will be happy, will be willing to come into the classroom, come to school every day and learn. But when there's a barrier there, then whether it be a learning style or whether it's related to poverty or home environment, it's an indicator for this child to have a dropout rate. And that's where I would start from.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. And we'll move the microphone down to the other end of the table to Chuck Conroy. I know it seems like a long time ago we asked this question.
Thank you, Tom, and could you repeat the question?
Well, the gist of it was years ago, Oglala Lakota, then it was Shannon County, now Oglala Lakota County did track their 8th grade graduates. And they came to the conclusion that only 30% were making it through high school. That the 70% of their 8th grade graduates were dropping out of high school. And so they obviously redoubled their efforts to try and better prepare the students, but they also created the virtual high school. That was several years ago. Has that changed? Do we still have our 8th grade graduates still struggling to get through high school? And are there things that we need to continue to do better to up that graduation rate?
There's a number of things that are being done and a number of things that need to be done. But first of all, when 8th graders graduate from the elementary and they go on to a high school, and it doesn't matter which high school they go to, but when you start with a parochial school, they have a set student body, and they only accept those that are at the higher end of the class that they graduate from for the freshman class. And the other schools, the Little Wound and Pine Ridge School, they take any student that wants to go there, regardless of where they're at when they graduate. So when that freshman class begins, it's a huge class to begin with. And I believe that if there is a proper, at each school, if they have a freshman orientation, if they have incoming 8th graders visiting, that all helps, because the student can see the school, can participate in the classroom changes, because most elementary schools are not, they don't change class. They're set in the classroom all day, the students. So that's one area that needs to be changed, is that they need to have a good freshman orientation, a good freshman academy where the freshmen can see how a high school is run, that they can sit with their peer group, freshmen, and slowly break into the school system. And that really works. I've seen that work both at Pine Ridge and at Rapid City Central, where they do have freshman academies. And I don't know if Little Wound has one or not, but that does help. And but a lot of issues do surface when a student goes to high school. When a student goes to high school, has a huge student body, and there's no freshman academy, then they're integrated into that school. And within that school, there are problems. There are their peer group to begin with. If they're not prepared for high school, well, then they're going to start skipping school. If they're not prepared for high school, then they're going to start facing drugs and alcohol problems, issues. And if they're not prepared for high school and their parents are not giving them the support that they need to get to school and to stay in school, well, they're going to drop out of school. And when they drop out of school, that's going to lead to I think I've seen the phrase pipeline to prison, because delinquency begins then when a student is idle. When there's nothing to do, then they start getting in trouble. So the school system needs to work on attendance. They need to make sure that when a student is starting to miss school, that student's family and that student himself is visited by the school, that the school makes sure that they find out why that student is missing and then start addressing the problem. And the parents need to continue to give the student a push to get him into school and to become familiar with the school itself.
Okay.
Those are important issues. And the new high school that has been talked about, the vocational school, What I supported on that new high school is that the overcrowdedness at the different high schools. That's another reason why students are dropping out, is because there's just too many kids in the classroom, and there's not enough textbooks to go around, and sometimes there's not enough teachers to teach, which results in a classroom being taught by a person that's not really able to teach that subject, or follow a lesson plan adequately. So those are all issues that I believe would lead Oglala Lakota County to start really going forward with a new high school, whether it be a technical high school or whether it be a normal high school.
Okay.
Because students need to stay in school, and we are getting a lot of kids on the reservation that are not in school, so that really needs to be addressed, by all the schools, through ONEC or whatever.
Thank you, Chuck. Once again, you're listening to KILI FM Radio, and today we are broadcasting live from the Woksape Tipi. It's on Oglala Lakota College's central campus here at Piya, Wiconi at 3 Mile Creek. And we have with us 4 guests. They're all running for the one lone seat that's vacant on the Oglala Lakota County School Board. And if elected, you serve a 3-year term. The Oglala Lakota County covers the reservation. It has schools that go preschool through 8th grade in Batesland, Wolf Creek, Rocky Ford, and Red Shirt. Close to 1,500 students when you also count virtual high school. So it's a tremendous responsibility. The election day, and we really encourage everyone to get out and vote. Election day is Tuesday. That's tomorrow, the 13th. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. Polling places in Batesland, it's at the Batesland School. Cooney Table at Red Shirt School. In Kyle at Medicine Root District Cap Office. In Manderson at Wounded Knee District Cap Office in Manderson. In Oglala, Brother Rene Hall. In Pine Ridge Precincts 1 and 3 at Pine Ridge Cap Office. In Porcupine at Our Lady of Lourdes Title I Trailer. And in Rocky Ford at Singing Horse Trading Post. We really encourage you to get out. They open as early as 7. They close at 7 p.m. So there is time before work or after work. There's time to get there throughout the day. I'm going to start another round of questions, but this time I need to shorten up the answers a tad here. And somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes. I'd like to, so that we can get some more questions out there on the table. And so I'd like to ask you to shorten up your questions and be a little bit more efficient with how you answer the questions. This next question, we'll start with Maurice. Now, there is a teacher shortage, not just here on Pine Ridge. All across South Dakota, there's a teacher shortage. And we're not meeting the demands of the number of teachers that retire or resign and replacing them. Here on Pine Ridge, we have 13 schools. And last year, Oglala Lakota College had 1 graduate in education. 1. This year there are 6. These are K through 8 elementary education graduates. Last year 1, this year 6. But 13 schools, you can't tell me that some of those schools will have no turnover or will have no vacancies. You know that I'd be confident in saying that every one of those schools is going to have some vacancies. And we're not meeting the need. As leaders, if you're elected to the Oglala Lakota County School Board, what can you do or suggest to help recruit more teachers, to encourage? Each of you have spent time in the classroom. You've been teachers, so you know what it takes to be a classroom teacher. And I have a sense that you understand the need and the importance, the value that we place. We don't always place monetarily enough money on it, but we know, if we're involved in education, how important that role is. So as a board member, can you help recruit and retain teachers? And in addition to that, recruit and retain Native American teachers. I'm assuming that we'd like to see more Native American teachers in the Oglala Lakota County school system. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. What are your thoughts about teacher recruiting and retaining?
Well, thank you, Tom, for the question. this is a problem across the nation at this time of teacher recruitment and enough available teachers. I think there's several things that need to happen. One, very locally, is each system needs to devise a plan with our local college to educate paraprofessionals and others interested in filling those vacancies. I think that a collective effort, like the entire Pine Ridge Reservation, with the help of the college, should happen. I don't know if the state has an allocation of Title II monies that does exactly some of those things. I don't know if Oglala Lakota County is involved in that process, but I do think that that they need to be. If elected, I certainly will help to fulfill that void.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. Mary?
Okay, going back to that question, Tom, teacher shortage. I feel that with Oglala Lakota College being here, and we had teachers come through, students come through to be teachers, but sometimes at the end of the tunnel there, they hit a place where they have a hard time passing their praxis tests. That's one of them, and what we can do to help those teachers to pass this praxis test. And then another one would be maybe a salary to interest more individuals out there to go into the teaching field, and encourage the paras to sign up for some classes, and encourage them to go into the field of teaching. But that would be my...
Okay, thank you, Mary. We're going to pass it down to Chuck now.
I'm glad we cut Morris down on those questions. Anyway, Tom, that's a good question because that's been around for a long time on teacher salaries. And I think the average teacher salary now statewide is $38,000 beginning first year teacher. And that's the same for a registered nurse, and I think both careers need to be higher, both of those occupations. That's a low salary for each. But one of the ways that I suppose we could start recruiting teachers is to start in the high school, start having our counselors take students to the various colleges and let them see how a teacher is prepared to teach, and that teaching comes from the heart. So we can instill that to the students, that that's a good career, that you're helping students become the future. So if we can do that, and if we can work on the math field, and we can work on the science field, and I think Onek and Cecilia is doing that with President Shortbow right now. They're dialoguing back and forth to come up with some type of MOU for science and math. That would be great if that could overflow to the other high schools in the area. But that's true. We need to really work on our students to think of a career in education, because it's an honorable career, and it's our future.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Pat?
Thank you, Tom. I would suggest probably just as the other people have said, just partnering with various entities, local entities, to try to create interest in better in teaching. Maybe getting into those high schools earlier with these young people, and encourage them to give it a try. We have an entity that comes on this reservation and provides teachers, which is that Teach for America, and those teaching positions, those teachers are not certified, but they have degrees in their various fields, and so they take some of the opportunities, and the schools that employ them spend extra resources on top of the salaries that are given to our other teachers, and these non-certified teachers are making the same amount, but we're also paying extra to Teach for America for that service, and so in the end it costs the school system more money. I think we can create the opportunity of trying to encourage an incentive program like that locally to drive our tribal membership into that field of educating our youth and becoming teachers. And to, if we can make it work along the same lines of that, then the opportunity, I think it would be really successful. So.
Okay, thank you. We've I've had heard from some of you about the importance of having culture in the curriculum, and I know that Mary has commented that education starts in the home, and we have reached, I think, in some ways, a crisis area. Maybe not everyone agrees with me, but that unless we put effort into the Lakota language, we will not have the Lakota language down the road. We've seen some immersion schools get underway out to Oglala now. There's a immersion daycare where students start at 2 years old, and just a small group of 5, and then they speak only the Lakota language goes on in that daycare, and then they take another crew in it the next year, and now that the oldest crew are kindergarten students at Red Club. Same thing, totally immersion in Lakota language. The Oglala Lakota College has an immersion school here also, which they've added 1 grade at a time at a year. Oglala Lakota County Schools has a Lakota Studies curriculum. Is the county schools committed as well to helping in the role of keeping the Lakota language going and helping our students have some people feel that the dropout rate also is connected to a sense of identity or a lack of sense of identity of who we are as, say, Lakota people, and that we have a solid sense of who we are through language and culture and so forth. Does the school system have a role in that? And has Oglala Lakota County school system done well in that area, or are there things that they still need to do even more? So we'll start with Mary.
Well, the Oglala Lakota County mission strongly states that. It states to strengthen the Lakota identity and values of students and to assure their overall well-being academic success. It strongly just lays it out for you. And the curriculum, there has to be Lakota language and also a Lakota language and Lakota culture. Those two needs to be put together. And I know Little Wound School has a very good structure in the elementary department. Well, we have it through high school and middle school too, but this year the elementary, they have a very good program going where all week long they have the kids come in and have the Lakota culture first, and then after that, then they have the Lakota language. So during that time when the students come in, they focus on the Lakota language itself. And then the next class, when they're coming in, then they're focused on the Lakota culture, identifying who you are as an individual. And the Oglala Lakota County School, if they would follow the mission statement, and then I don't think they would be out of line, and to enforce the Lakota culture curriculum in the classrooms, and also it has to be like a consistency every day.
Okay, thank you, Mary. We'll pass the mic over to Chuck now. Chuck Conroy.
I agree with Mary that there needs to be consistency in teaching the language because students can sit in the classroom and learn the language, but if there's no reinforcement at home again, and that's where parents come in, then eventually they're going to lose what they're taught. So with the culture and the language at school, that's great, but we need to have reinforcement at home. The students need that, and we can integrate, and I've seen it done in the various schools. You know, Lakota culture into the curriculum. I've seen it done, beginning in kindergarten. I haven't observed an immersion school yet, but I have, kindergarten through grade 8, and watched the classrooms, watched the classroom teachers, and I watched the specialty teachers teach. And it's great to see. It's great to see because at the early grades, students learn fast, and they pick up the language, they pick up the culture real fast, and the identity is great. But as they go through the system, I don't know why, but it seems that some of the students lose their ability to speak the language fluently. They retain words, but they don't speak fluently, and I guess that's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Pat?
Thank you. At one point, Oglala Lakota County was kind of like leading the state in their development of their language curriculum and cultural immersion in their school, and then for some reason it just fell off or went away. I think a lot of it had to do with buy-in from teachers or non-speaking teachers, and then you also had the prejudice of the speaking staff that the ownership issues, I guess, for the language speakers that this is ownership, this is ours, things like that. So I think part of that, if elected, I would push towards really supporting that venture back, bringing that venture back because I know they created a lot of the standards there, and at the time they were ready for implementation, there was a lot of pushback, whether from the non-speaking or non-native portion of the staff that we have, and I know from what I've heard on some of it was the union got involved with some of that, and so things really came to a halt when we were leading. It was something that was probably the county should have been really proud of, that they were leading the state and pushing that, and even pushing the state education to accept that curriculum, and that was going to be taught not only at Oglala Lakota County, but the state would be required to bring that into some of their curriculum. So I think maybe looking at that and going back, and since a great portion of I'd say about 99% of our students are Lakota, I think developing more than just a curriculum, but also a contract based on to those teachers that say you're going to be part of this, you're going to buy into it, you're going to learn the language, is that there's teachers, and if not, then there's other places to work, because the culture and the language is really vital to our people, to our understanding ourselves, and we need to get to those things. And so that's how I would pursue it, Tom. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Maurice?
I guess I'm aware of several past experiences of Lakota language being brought to the classroom, and I really believe that if I were elected, I would really try to get it started in the preschool, of those schools that have preschool, and go on into kindergarten and up the ladder, and continuation of that approach.
Okay. Thank you. Once again, we are coming at you live from Oglala Lakota College's Woksape Tipi. It's located here on the 3 Mile Creek on the Piya Wiconi campus of Oglala Lakota College. We have an election forum that's on. We have our 4 candidates that are running for 1 vacancy on the Oglala Lakota County School Board. It is a 3-year term. Mike Carlo Jr., who has been on the board, decided not to run for re-election. It creates a vacancy, and whoever's elected tomorrow will take office, I think, around the 2nd week of July, in the first board meeting in July. Polls open tomorrow at 7 and close at 7 p.m. There's not always a lot of separation between community and the school. And sometimes problems that have impact the community and Lakota people here on Pine Ridge have a way of finding themselves into the school. I can remember one mother telling me that her son said, you know, the minute I walk out this door, I am inundated with alcohol and weed, marijuana. And today we even have a bigger threat. We have seen an increase in the use of methamphetamine from one end of the reservation to the other, and its effect has been devastating. As a school board, what is our role? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the impact of alcohol and drugs, and even more specifically now, the rampant growth of methamphetamine use on Pine Ridge? Do you see that impacting the school? And are there things that we can do about it to help, as one of the candidates said, create a safe environment for our children? But that's got to be worrisome. Talk to me about it. Who's up first? Is Chuck up first on this one?
You know, that's a huge problem, Tom, and like you said, meth runs from one side of the reservation to the other, but it's in the boundaries of South Dakota also. And young people have lost their lives. There's been a lot of tragedy in families because of it, and I don't really think that it's going to go away that fast, you know, even though we're addressing the problem and people are becoming aware, because we really need, first of all, to begin with, a good law and order program. Law and order needs to step up. They need to, like somebody said once before, is that in every community, everybody knows who the dealers are and they know who the bootleggers are, and so they need to start right there. And then the classrooms at school, we need to educate the students too. They need to fully understand what meth is and what it can do to the body and what it has done to those people and students who have used it, and alcohol the same way, and marijuana. And marijuana is kind of becoming more acceptable to patients with serious health problems. And there's been, even South Dakota, the Flandreau Sioux tribe is trying to come up and legalize marijuana within the reservation there for that purpose, you know, to help those people who have medical problems. But so that's going to set another light on how we're going to address that and teaching it to the students, you know, the use of marijuana. But the other drugs, you know, the cocaine and the meth and whatever else there is really harmful. And our counselors at the school have to be educated in that. You know, they have to be able to go to the classrooms. They have to have classes and show graphs, show charts, and have examples. Show reality examples of what happens when you do use this and how it affects the mind and how it affects the unborn. So it's a problem that we can't step away from. It's a problem that we got to, you know, continue to face head on. And everybody has to be a part of the solution. Everybody in that school system, from the bus driver to the paraprofessional, everybody has to be able to tell a student, you know, what's right and what's wrong. And then at the professional level, those that, like the counselors, you know, that they really need to address that and educate the child.
Okay.
And parents too, you know, through parent meetings, you know, they need to come to the schools, and they need to, if they don't know, you know, they need to be shown also. Thanks.
Thank you, Chuck. Pat?
Thank you, Tom. I think we need to start with, you know, the Oglala tribe needs to create some better laws to protect our children in these types of situations, and there has to be a true enforcement mechanism to really follow a process, because a lot of times laws are created, but there's no process on how you get to there once things are discovered. So I think ideally there needs to be, that process needs to be created within the system, and then once it's developed in school, or schools need to take that on hand and help assist the tribe in developing that on what's going to be the best solution in dealing with those situations where our students are under constant attack, so to speak, of their safety, of you know, being forced through peer pressure or whatever it might be on drugs, you know. And so we need to have that enforcement. We need to also understand that some of our educators are part of the problem, and that the students know these things, and that and we need to stop making excuses for people that work within a system that are having dysfunctional lifestyles, and then it's affecting. So I think it really needs to be a collaborative effort between the schools, the Oglala tribe, justice portion of it, the Attorney General's office really need to ramp up some kind of process in which this can be developed, and so the children start to feel safe when they go to and report things like this. So thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Maurice?
I think much of the same thing that these two gentlemen had indicated, but somebody's trying to build a wall that would supposedly help that problem, but I don't know if that will get done. The other thing is we need to cooperate, coordinate, and do things with the entities, the law, the everything that happens, and the health, everything that happens to try to make students more knowledgeable about the drugs and why they shouldn't do it. That involves self-esteem. You know, it's easier if your self-esteem is up to reject those kinds of things, the drugs, the alcohol. And I think that the schools can work specifically with self-esteem building activities to prevent some of the students venturing out and doing those things. However, back to the first part of my statement is, you know, the cooperative work with different entities, including the health system and the law system, to try to prevent some of the issues we're getting into.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice. Mary?
Okay, I would say that in the schools, if there's not already a health class, then during this time, health class, that's where you would introduce the do's and don'ts, things that affect our bodies, such as alcohol, drugs. All this will be taught in the health class if it's not already there. And another one would be to enforce whatever laws that are there, to enforce those laws, because there is some laws in place, but nobody's upholding them or abiding by the laws, such as there's a attendance law, but I don't think nobody is enforcing that. So anyway, enforce the laws and policies, and also to provide a safe place for the children when they come, because sometimes maybe some of these kids might be going home to an environment exposed to that environment. So while the child is at the school, that gives that child that safety to be at school. And I know maybe they're going through trauma, so then counseling could come in and help that child also to be aware of the dangers of taking drugs and alcohol. Not only that, but it could be any other issue affecting drugs and alcohol.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. You know, we'll start with Pat on this one. Once again, this is the Oglala Lakota County School Board Election Forum. The election for the school board is tomorrow. We encourage you to get out and vote. And that when you vote, not if you vote, but when you vote, you make an educated decision. That you go out and that you've listened to the candidates, you've asked questions, and you're very thoughtful about how you make a decision about who you vote for, and looking ahead to the future of our kids and our children in the school system. You know, I've heard a couple of candidates talk about this, and I think if anybody knows Oglala Lakota County schools right now, they know that Wolf Creek School is bursting at the seams. And yet, you know, developing either a new school or a new annex or whatever does not happen overnight. It takes time. And if Wolf Creek School has 800 students now, and they're going to have, you know, pushing 850, and when will they be pushing 900? Will we have a new school by the time we have 900? We live in I think, a very uncertain time. We've seen a change in administration. Our Congress is, the House and the Senate are both controlled by Republicans, and the White House has a Republican as well. I don't want to get started on that, but what it has created is created a sense of uncertainty. There is a budget that was presented by the new president that I don't think Congress is taking very serious, but we don't know. We just don't know. We have this huge need for facilities here on Pine Ridge, Wolf Creek School, and a couple of you have talked about the need for a high school. High school's not a very doesn't come cheaply. I mean, it takes, that's a major investment to find a location here on Pine Ridge and maybe in a central area and build. I think we can all agree that, you know, that might help the dropout rate. But talking brass tacks, where does the money come to do Wolf Creek and to do a high school? Is it realistic? Are there things as a board member and leadership that you can provide? Or some things about board members are you have networks, you have connections with people and experience and things like this. So how realistic is it? Can we find the money for a new school at Wolf Creek? Can we find the money for a technical high school that would be in a central location on Pine Ridge? We'll start with Pat.
Thank you, Tom. I know just through what I've heard, the current school board is working with a A&E firm for design on the expansion of the Wolf Creek School. So they've begun the process already.
Expansion or a brand new school?
Expansion of what they're going to need right now, facility-wise. So, you know, the money to come for that is just, it's tough right now because of you don't know where the administration's going, whether or not the money that they have put away to begin this project is going to be enough by the time they finish the design. You know, I'm very familiar with the design process. I've done that for a great many years for the OLC tribe through some various buildings we've done and through contracting. And it's a very lengthy process. It's probably about 24, 28 months long by the time you get, you know, to your 100% completion of what you think you're going to need, you know, and you're planning for every contingency out there, whether it be the infrastructure, whether or not it'll support it, to whether or not you're going to get them students in the end, and which brings that dollar into the school to operate, you know. And so it's a very touch and go right now. I think, you know, once the government passes a bill, I think a budget, which they haven't done in a great many years, whether education will get the attention that it needs, or whether they'll continue to cut away, you know. And so, ideally, I think for the county, the planning stage is really for that expansion at Wolf Creek is where it's at, and then the high school, I think, is going to be, you know, have to be determined down the road on where that money is going to come from and how we're going to relate that. Whether or not we're kind of different than a lot of things that we get our money from the state, but how districts usually run in other counties is that they run a bond or something to float those construction costs, and we don't have that ability at the county right now, I don't believe. And so I think it's going to remain that way until we can get a definitive answer on what our numbers are going to be if we can do a high school and make it work on our reservations.
Thank you, Pat. Maurice?
Well, the Wolf Creek situation is really crucial at this point, the elementary school there. I think there needs to be an expansion of that particular school. If not, you know, ideally, you'd like to construct a whole new facility there. But I've heard numbers as high as $100 million to do that whole thing. And realistically, hats off to anybody that could do that, to get the money for that at this day and age, because it's going to be really tough. But I think that, there was a process that still exists, and it's open this year for funding, is the Impact Aid Association. And previous to now, we've gone, when I was an employee there, we had, we went through Impact Aid and got grants to start some of the facilities that we built, and that being the Red Shirt School and the Rocky Ford School and the Baseland School. So, and following those processes and the ability to have the tax credit funds that we got, I think, to build those buildings that were built at Red Shirt was about 7 years ago, and the other two later. But for the last two, I think we received about $7 million to initiate and begin, and then we had a grant that covered a large portion of that whole funding area. So, there is a process, there is a way to do that. There's a lot of people that you need to come in contact with and to work with in order to do that process, but it could be workable.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. Mary?
Okay, I would say if the school is bursting at the seams, then are they meeting the safety regulations and the state requirements? I would say for that, because I don't know how many feet is required for each child that is in the school system. So are they meeting that requirement, or are they meeting that requirement is what I'm saying. But also, we know with President Trump slashing the money already, so we don't know if we have the money available. I mean, what is going to be appropriated for the Native education. And I would say lobbying at the congressional level, and also writing some grants that would help. And then if the administration, if they already have the cost or not, are they saving some? Do they have that in place already, or what's, And I know if there's that many students in that school, then they definitely need to have an expansion of the school.
Okay. We'll move the microphone over to Chuck.
Thank you, Tom. The expansion at Wolf Creek, I think, is going forward, like Mr. Ross said. And that's very important, because we need to do that before the new high school comes about. And the new high school, I was on the board when they built the school at Rocky Ford and built the school at Baseland, the new schools there. And the process that they used there to find the funding through 874 and the grants is the same process that they're going to probably have to use to get the new high school going. And I don't know how far along they are as far to paying off the note for the schools that have been renovated and built now, but I think they're close to having paid that off. I think it's coming near. So when that's done, I think that then their attention will turn to the new high school. Because when the school is overcrowded like the elementary is at Wolf Creek, then learning becomes hard, and classrooms become hot, and teachers become irritable. And all of that goes hand in hand. So hopefully that expansion will happen soon, and the new high school will take place soon as the schools are. That bill is paid.
Okay.
I'm sure of that.
Thank you. We've heard some about safety, and I think Oglala Lakota County Schools presents a challenge if you're looking at, as a board member, helping to be responsible for the safety of our students and having a safe school. Redshirt table's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. What is it if there was a problem? If something came up, somebody showed up there with a gun, what is the response time for law enforcement to get there? And whether Rocky Ford or Batesland, obviously Wolf Creek's close to Pine Ridge, but are these things, is there a safe school plan for Oglala Lakota County schools? And are we confident that our children, when they are put on the bus and go to school, that they are in a safe environment? I think it was this past year that in one of the schools in the middle school, a big fight broke out in the middle school, and there were 5, 6, 7 young girls involved, and some of them were taken away to the what do you call that? JDC. And but I guess that's the question. Have we done enough to make have a safe school environment? Are there additional things, especially in today when we have seen so many people with guns approach and enter school systems? That has to be a tremendous responsibility if you're a board member or an administrator of a school system. Who's starting this? Maury's starting this, or is it Mary?
Yeah, the safe school issue, I don't know if you can do enough to totally prevent everything, but I think you always need to relook at your plan. You know, a safe school has a lot of strands to it, so it would be different kinds of ideas, from fires to some goofy person coming in and try to hurt people. There's a lot of different strands, and I think all locations take some time to get law enforcement people there, and I think that Red Shirt is also uses Hermosa safe the ambulances and the fire truck stuff, and so you know it takes quite a while to get there, and there's no way to reduce that, I guess.
Okay, Mary, any input on this?
Well, the school, to make it safe, I would say, I think if they're not already doing this, is that the school should already have a system in place where they provide the tornado drills, fire drills, lockdown, and then there should already be in place in policy in the student handbook and parent handbook about bullying at school or even fighting. And these are some of the things that should have already been in place, and I guess to work with the nearest entity for the safety, like getting fire trucks out there or ambulances or the police out there to work with those nearby entities and create a safe environment for all the children and staff too.
Okay, thank you. Chuck?
Thank you, Tom. I think each school, you know, practice the lockdown drill, like she mentioned, and throughout the year, you know, this procedure is gone over at various times during the school year, so the staff and the students know how to react when something like this happens. And when it does happen, and if it, and I don't know if it has happened, but when that time comes, they go into their lockdown procedure, and the police are contacted, and at Baseline School and all the other schools, they have security guards. And these security guards are probably the person that's going to take charge until the police arrive. And the students are probably locked in their classrooms following the procedure that's set in the district. I haven't seen the new procedure, because I know they come out with a new one last year, but It's probably real similar to the one that was in the past.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pat?
Thank you. You know, we just have to do these things. You know, a lot of times when our schools were built, safety wasn't really a concern back then. But you know, now you got to do it. You got to look for those additional grant dollars or something to create, you know, that window of time that you may need to get into your whatever your situation might be. And even if it is an active shooter, that you know, you need to create those safety zones so that children are safe and have time to get away. You know, it's really, I guess we're really isolated because of our location and the response times. Even with the shortfall of our law enforcement here on our reservation, whether they'll respond in time. So I think we really need to do a better job as a school and a school board of creating a safer zone, more restricted in how you get into a school. And those things, I know the county, and I notice a lot of schools now have a button you got to push to get in, but there's nobody really verifying. You know, you need somebody there at that door when it opens to make sure that there's no hidden weapons or of those types. So I think we really need to look at a better safety approach on the entry of our schools and to provide that extra safety net for our children. So.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Once again, we're broadcasting live here on KILI Radio and on KOLC TV. We are getting ready for the upcoming Oglala Lakota County School Board election. It is set for tomorrow, Tuesday, June 13th. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. Once again, a quick reminder. In Baseland, that's at Baseland School. Cooney Table, that's at Red Shirt School. In Kyle, at the Medicine Root District Cap Office. In Manderson, at the Wounded Knee District Cap Office in Manderson. In Oglala, Brother Renee Hall. In Pine Ridge, at the Pine Ridge Cap Office. In Porcupine, at OLL's Title I Trailer. And in Rocky Ford at Singing Horse Trading Post. Polls open again at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. You know, Oglala Lakota County used to have an event. It was the Pine Ridge Reservation school awards banquet, and it honored students from all across the reservation. It invited students in 8th grade and in high school were nominated in 4 different areas, and also student government, student councils were also nominated, and there were opportunities to make some special honorings in there. The students and their parents were invited to the banquet, have a nice meal, and to honor the top students. And KILI Radio was always there to broadcast. I thought it was a good thing, but I don't think for the last 2 years that we've had a Pine Ridge Reservation Student Awards banquet. Oglala Lakota County was kind of the host. For many years they hosted it at Wolf Creek School, and I think for the last couple of years they hosted it at Rocky Ford School, but it has been discontinued. And do you feel there was value in that and that should be continued? And why do you think it's not happened over the last year or two? Mary is up first.
Well, I would say that it is a big, it's a value to the students all across the reservation, no matter what school you come from. Getting an award, getting an honor means a lot to the student, and it brings, kind of raise self-esteem in their child. And this event needs to still happen. This event still needs to happen because, I think students are used to having this event and they look forward to that. And then all of a sudden it comes to a stop, then they're questioning where did it go or why did it stop? And is it because of budget cuts or what's the purpose for not having it, you know? But I personally feel that it should still continue on to honor the students because they worked hard all year long to bring up their grades, to come to school every day through rain and shine, and that end of the year, they're looking forward to this, and I feel that it needs to continue, and whatever the problem was for not having it, it should be brought back up, so that way the students will have something to look forward to at the end of the year, being recognized, and that brings, brightens the child, brightens the student.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And Chuck Conroy.
Thank you, Tom. That's a good question because I think I'm in favor of bringing that back, the student honors and student awards, and that was an annual thing, like Mary was saying, that students look forward to. And it's been there, it was there for a long time, 30 some years, I believe. It's kind of like OLL, I mean, L&I, you don't want to see that go away, so I guess the board needs to sit down and find a funding avenue to continue that. Because I believe that if we find the right source and legitimate funding, then we can, that can be continued, but it needs to happen again. It needs to continue. That's a must for the student self-esteem. Along with that, scholarships come out of that. There's a lot of good things happen because of recognition for students and honors that are given out to recognize the achievements of students throughout their elementary years, so. And high school students were recognized also. It wasn't just elementary students, so
Right.
it was great. It was a good thing, and people look forward to that, and there was always schools got together at that time of the year in springtime, and there's a good atmosphere, so I hope to see that, and I would love to see that come back.
Thank you, Chuck. Pat?
Thank you.
I guess I feel the same way as all parties here, that it should continue on and should be find a way to bring it back. I know the funding of it became an issue. It was really the amount of the effort that was put into it was really put a lot of burden on the county, and I know they were asking the tribe to foot some of the bill, and I remember we contributed at one point in 15, I think, a great portion of that banquet, but I'm not sure what happened after that, why it went away, so maybe just something that really needs to be looked at, and maybe we need to create something that it's some kind of tax or something that funds that for our children, and that we can create taxes for almost anything. So I think it's a great opportunity to do something for the children through that process. So.
Thank you. Maurice?
Well, I think that was that was a long time event that was very positive, and if there's any word that best describe how the children felt, it was self-esteem. I suppose there was probably 600 or better students that went through that throughout the years, and today they still talk about it a great deal. They formed relationships, and it was all positive. At the very last year of that, funds were contributed from the Rapid City area and paid for the entire thing, and all in all, it was a tremendous amount of work, but a lot of people still highly respect it. It was a good thing, and I definitely, if I were elected to this board, I would be trying to bring that back.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice. Most of you have been involved in education, and you along the way, you look for ways that you can evaluate your students and seeing how they're doing. Are they improving? And we've, over the years, looked at a number of different testing processes. The state has a series of tests, and we've looked at different things. And sometimes I hear complaints that they're not culturally oriented, that they're not good for students here on Pine Ridge. Do you feel that today the testing that our students go through are a good evaluation of where our students are at and how they're doing? Do they help us as educators to do better? And are they a good, indicator of where our kids are at today?
Well, Tom, those tests are an indicator of how our students are doing, but like you said, some of the tests are not culturally relevant. You know, they don't take into consideration the students themselves that are down here, and the tests. I really believe that there's a better way to test students too. When our students go to high school and they're not prepared, then that falls back on the teaching staff also. You know, it's not just the students, but we need to take a look at how those tests have fallen, the teachers teaching to the test, you know, they failed somehow if they're not able to succeed. But the tests are an indicator. So
Okay.
they'll always be there.
Okay, thank you. Pat?
I guess, you know, when you go back, and I think a lot of it's related to funding, but the testing process is really, you know, a lot of our educational systems have begun to just teach to testing, you know, because that's how we're driven, you know, to try to increase a number on whatever module we're using so that we can show success in our program. And I think what happens a lot of times is that we don't stick with it long enough. We're always changing curriculum or some portion of that so that we can't get a true accurate whether or not we're progressing or not. Some models show us progressing greatly, and then some models show us going the other direction. So it all depends on the standardize of the testing and whether it's culturally relevant, whether or not you know our preparation and our systems are looking at those things. So a lot of times, a lot of the administrators who've been in the system for a great many years, like these gentlemen here, 30 plus years or longer, will tell you that that's the problem, that they're not culturally relevant testing for our base of our students, you know. And so our push should be to create that base, and then how we're going to create our success. We have the greatest, I think, I've said this for the longest time since I've been on the school board, that we have the greatest administrators on our reservation. We've got the most educated people, from doctorates to just the years of experience. We should be able to sit down and collaborate and create that process so that we're not relying on an outside entity to say whether or not we're progressing or not. That we're going to develop that standard, and we're going to say we're successful in our areas. So thank you.
The testing has been a problem ever since I started school, I believe, which is a long time ago. But one of the main issues about testing is that the federal government, through Title I, mandates that you do test, and if you don't test, you don't get the money. Also, the other federal monies, and I'm sure about this with the state schools, and I believe that's probably true with the BIE schools, and that they have the same problem. If you don't perform the way they want you to, or your students aren't achieving the way they want you to, then you even suffer under No Child Left Behind. You could lose your school. Now, we do have a new superintendent of education in Washington, D.C., Betsy DeVos is her name, And they did create a new system and that will replace No Child Left Behind, and that is Every Child Succeeds. We don't know what the demands are and what the testing will be, but I would almost guarantee you that the state will still have they have a new system now called the STAR system, and it reflects the native schools doing a poor job on the academic achievement of students. So, you know, the money situation, as long as we accept the money, I think we're bound to, or else we won't get the money.
Thank you, Maurice. Mary?
Well, I would say that since the federal government's giving us the money for that, and I guess sometimes it almost feels like we don't have a choice, but also a lot of these testings, it's done by the computer. And when it's done by the computer, you have these students that are on the computer, and a lot of times after the child takes the tests, and it gives a reading, but that's not, I myself, I feel that that's not where that child is at. Because what happens is a lot of times these kids, just to be done right away, they just get on the computer without even taking the time to read the questions and going over it. They just click on anything, click, click, click to get it done, just so they can be done with the test. And then when they do this, the outcome is the test score is very low. And that's not where they're at academically, but a lot of times that's what happens. And whether we agree with it or not, I guess, again, it goes back to this affects the funding for the school, and sometimes it will affect our accreditation too, because that's where we get the money from the federal government, and that's what I see as an educator is.
Okay. Thank you. I want to give each person a chance to kind of wrap things up. We'll have been here almost 2 hours here. By the time we're done, it'll be a little over 2 hours. And there's a couple things that I have an interest in. Each one of you has been involved in education. And for myself, I'd like to know why you chose education, why you committed over the years to be involved in education. And I think that's important to know. And a question I always ask people, because I think it's our responsibility, is to say, what kind of job are we doing in preparing the next generation? How are we doing? And I'm scared because I don't think we're doing a good enough job. The next generations, it's up to us to prepare them, and so that they're there to take over, to be the new leadership, to take us down the road. And I worry about that. I just don't know that we're consciously thinking about how best can we prepare the next generation. Does Oglala Lakota County Schools fit into that? Is that part of how we prepare the next generation? So those are two issues. You can choose to answer that in your closing comments or not. I'm just throwing them out there on the table. I'll give each of you an opportunity for a close. We'll start with that.
Thank you, Tom. Well, you know, we've come a long way. Education, you know, really trying to better ourselves through education. It's been a stickler in my family for a great many years to get an education, to get out there, and then to give back. And so it's something that's been instilled in us through our grandmother, our father, our mother. And so we've been here 5 generations, I guess, education. And, I think part of pursuing a board membership is just to further that, in that I have a tendency to do the right thing, not so much as a a cliquish person. I believe that the children and the education comes first, and that all the adult issues which seem to plague our educational system need to be found a way to work through them, and in developing a better school system for our children, a safer environment, because it's a tough situation to be in education, to be an educator, to be one who chose to work with children and develop children and into the next generation, so to speak, of which is coming. And so I think through a lot of our lack of our culture and lack of our teachings that were given to us by our parents and grandparents have not really taken hold, and it seems like there's a lost generation where people are just struggling to survive, and that those teachings are really by the wayside. So to really help try to develop a effort to bring that back, and through our educational system and through the Oglala County schools, that we can develop something that would really make a difference for our people, whether it be through the revitalization of the Lakota language and culture and curriculum, to just being a better person to one another, and extending those greetings out there, and always encouraging our children to be better, no matter what it may be, whatever those, that eventually, if you work hard and strive for it, we can all overcome those obstacles that are out there, and make a difference in our communities. And it just takes a small effort on everybody's part to do that. And it's not the sole responsibility of any one board or board member, but I think it's a more greater effort of the communities and the families, and as we move forward to try to make education in the forefront of our children, and creating a better understanding of how things are done, and be able to change those things in the future, that through education. And they always say education is going to make a change, but right now we're really struggling at that point because of the dropout rate and those types of barriers that are really not allowing a great number of our membership to be successful. It's tough right now financially for a lot of people, so I'm hoping that you would vote for me, and so that I can help assist in making those changes at the Oglala Lakota County schools and through their administrative system, and so that we can really strive to, because they hold a great number of our young people in their system that attend there, that we can achieve that and create a better life here eventually for our people, and make a greater difference and a brighter future. So with that, I thank you, Tom, for this time.
Thank you very much, Pat. Up next is Maurice Twist.
In closing, I would like to thank the KILI radio station for having us, and certainly to Tom for coordinating the activity. And I just want to say personally, I've been in education for a long time, and I still have an extreme interest in education. I'm very motivated to do some things with education, and I hope to, in the future, improve some things. And I would like to, in closing, say, certainly invite all the people, the parents, the grandparents, the uncles and the aunts, and the bachelors or whatever, to get out and vote tomorrow. I think I heard on some election results last week where like 3% of the people in the precinct went out to vote. And I hope we can do a lot better than that, whoever you are and everything. Just try to come out and vote for whoever you wish. I thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. And Mary?
Okay, again, I'd like to just thank KILI Radio. Tom, thank you for doing the interview. And also thank you to all you guys sitting here to collaborate with you all afternoon. And I guess one of my reasons why I wanted to go into education was because my father always instilled in me that not only me, but my family, that education was really important. And he provided a safe environment for us, no alcohol and drug-free environment. We always put prayer first in everything that we did. And as I look back over my brothers, my sisters, and I, they've all accomplished their roles in education, and they fulfill what my father had dreamed for them to be. And now it's us to turn around and provide that for our future generation, but also to the KILI listening audience across the reservation. I would like to just promote the families to work together with all the school entities, no matter where you're at in your district. Work with the school and be involved with your children and everything that they do, especially when they go to school. Be there for them and give them a lot of hugs. A hug would go a long way, and I would encourage that for the parents. And I just want to encourage the parents to continue to stand behind your children. Let them know that you're there. Let them know that it's safe. And to let them know that education is real important in the future, because I always tell that to the students that I work with, that education is real important. And we played a game in a classroom, and I said, what can you do to bring money in? And we kind of worked on that, building skills. Pretty soon we were building goals and objectives for the future for that child. And we need to do a lot of this in our classrooms and working with the children, so then they can, at an early age, understand how important education is in their lives. And I guess in closing, that's what I would like to say. And I guess if you go out tomorrow, you've heard all four of us sitting here all afternoon discussing, having a debate. So based on that, I guess you could go out and vote, make a vote, pick a person, somebody that will maybe bring awareness, changes in the school system. And again, I'd like to thank all the listeners out there. Thank you for listening this afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. And up next is Chuck Conroy.
Thank you, Tom, and I also would like to thank KILI listeners and those of you who took the time to listen to us four candidates here speak on our concerns about the education of our children within the Shannon County school system, or Oglala Lakota County school system as it's known now officially. I became involved in education after my return from Vietnam. I got involved in the Teacher Corps program, which was at Pine Ridge, and through that program I was able to get into education and gain a degree with Black Hills State College. And I've stayed in education ever since then. And it's been exciting, it's been rewarding. And when I started at Little Wound School as the principal, I was told by an elder that to be successful, you need to treat the children as they deserve to be treated, with love and respect. And that's been my philosophy ever since that worked in the programs, worked with the goals of the program, and never differentiated from the guidelines that were there. So that meant that we had a successful school when that was done, and that was done at Little Wound. When I was there, they were the #1 school in contract schools, and they were looked upon within the Teacher Corps program. So, but that was then, and now with the Oglala Lakota County School program, I still look forward to, if I get on the board, to stress program accountability, to stress I have good empathy, and I'm a good leader. And I'm not afraid to step in there and to do the right thing. So if you vote for me, I will do that. I'll listen to you. I'll take your concerns to the next level, and we will get things done. Thank you.
Thank you. You have been listening to the Oglala Lakota County School Board Election Forum. I want to thank very much Chuck Conroy, Pat Ross, Maurice Twist, and Mary Whiteface Youngbear for coming and sharing today and taking the time to visit with us and have our listeners have a chance to hear a little bit about your background and what you stand for. And I thank all of you very much for taking the time to share. I encourage everyone out there who is listening and ask you to encourage other people to get out and vote tomorrow. The polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. all across Pine Ridge Reservation, across Oglala Lakota County. And the precincts are in Baseland. It's at Baseland School. Up in Cooney Table, it's the Red Shirt School. In Kyle, it's at Medicine Root District Cap Office. In Manderson, at the Wounded Knee District Cap Office. In Pine Ridge, it's at the Pine Ridge Cap Office. In Oglala, it's at Brother Renee Hall. And in Porcupine, Our Lady of Lords Title I Trailer. And at Rocky Ford, it's at Singing Horse Trading Post. If you have any questions, you can call 288-1921. Thank you again. I thank KOLC for helping to broadcast this. I thank the staff of Woksape Tipi very much for being hosting us and their hospitality. I appreciate that very much. For KILI News and Public Affairs, this is Tom Casey. We'll send it back to Porcupine Butte and wish you a very good evening.